Right now, we're going to be joined on set by New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. He's going to tell us what's really going on in Albany and how the state of New York's finances are really doing. And next, foolish mistakes. That's what the recently ousted IRS commissioner said happened at the Internal Revenue Service. We're going to have the highlights of today's pretty testy hearings. And later, what is on tap for America's energy future? We're going to take you beyond the hype, the buzzwords, and tell you what really lies ahead. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for spending part of your Friday evening, May 17th, with us. Now, up first, we are joined by New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. Comptroller, thank you so much. We're going to get into the dollars and cents of New York. It seems like every year we talk about it. Things getting better, although it's a real challenge, especially for certain counties in the state here. But before you became Comptroller, you called Albany home, or home away from home. You spent 20 years in the Assembly. Have you ever seen it this bad? I swear, the month of April, it seemed that every night I was announcing a different arrest, a different investigation. You can't blame the public here for having so little faith in the legislature. And I know there's good people there, but still, you ever seen it this bad?
It really is disheartening, and obviously there have always been scandals. People have gotten in trouble before, but it just seems the frequency, especially at a time where you think by now folks would have figured out there are penalties, there are consequences when you do wrong. And you're right, the greatest fallout I think is just feeding that cynicism that's out there. Because the reality is we need more good people to get involved with the system. We need more competitive elections. We need more scrutiny of the candidates that come forward. We need more good, honest people who want to serve in the state legislature. And between the fact that people feel, God, if I get involved with that, do I get tainted? And the impediment that we have in New York, where it's very expensive to run campaigns, we really need to do some structural changes to turn around the way we do business in Albany.
I had a lot of your former colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, here around the table for the last few weeks, and I'll be honest, the stuff that I thought would be the root of this in the past, the second jobs, the conflicts of interest, or the Lulus, or whatever, no, it seems like it's this campaign funds, it's discretionary funds, that you get the bad elements that go there for the wrong reasons, that it's like kids in a candy store. And I got to admit, Richard Brodsky always tells me, I'll stop with the second jobs, Rich, and everything else, and I think you got to pay him more. It's not, he's like, that might be a little part of it, but the biggest thing is you give people here who don't have discretion or judgment, and you put crooks in the middle of it, and you let them control this campaign funds with little oversight. This is what you're going to get, and I think he's more right than wrong.
Well, it's a combination. It's the campaign funds. You've seen other folks getting in trouble because of the grants that they help community groups get. That money has been used for personal enrichment, not for the stated purpose. You have another case with another legislator who's in trouble because he fudged his travel records and applied for per diem reimbursement that he wasn't entitled to. So you're right, it does often get back to money.
But do people do this because they obviously think they can get away with it? Is that because there's not enough oversight? And also, you remember 20 years ago, there's a press room in Albany up there. It used to be filled with people. Now you can count them on one hand because of all the cutbacks. Is it because there's not enough people in the fourth estate, the joint media, or is it that Albany is not policing itself?
It's probably a combination of things, although I think you need to give credit to the prosecutors that have been working. I mean, certainly the federal prosecutors have stepped up, and I think we should thank them for that. And we need more.
But are they doing the job?
Well, clearly, because you look at all the folks that are getting in trouble. They're getting indicted. I have a collaboration between the Comptroller's office and the Attorney General's office. We have a group that works together on public integrity, public corruption issues, not only with the state legislator, but with officials all across the state that have produced some indictments and charges. So you certainly need more robust oversight. But the headlines we're reading are about people being charged and indicted. So you really can't get away with it. Even if you can in the short run, you are going to get away with it.
I want to get to the math of New York, but one more corruption question, that is Vito Lopez. Okay, this wasn't because he, was acting with malfeasance with money here, but when you read some of the transcripts of some of it turns your stomach what he apparently did with the
gross and very, very
to put it politely.
To read.
Now we're hearing that while he'd be leaving end of June 20th or something, they're trying to push him sooner. My question is Shelley Silver in trouble here? Because a lot of people said time out. Shelley either had to know more of what was going on, it was brought to his attention, he's only acting now after it's become so public and so open. Is the speaker in trouble, you think, over the Lopez scandal?
Well, the speaker's acknowledged that this was not handled properly. Ultimately, he has to respond to his members. So, from what I'm hearing, the members are pleased that he is taking the step now. As you know, we expect a motion next week to expel Lopez. When the dust settles, it'll be up to the members to decide who the speaker should be.
I saw that you've been very involved in Rockland counties in checking their finances here, and also been concerned, and not just to single out Rockland County, but they're using promissory revenues that, hey, we're going to get this in for sales tax, and it's like 4% more than the year prior. Obviously, people are concerned about NASA. I can go down the list here. But tell me, when you look at the map in New York, where you're most worried that the numbers just aren't adding up.
Well, Rockland is certainly a significant stress point, and it's an important county. And as you know, the legislature is looking at this issue as well. There are proposals for deficit financing, which weren't approved last year. And the discussions that are going on now, the state legislative delegation is talking about if there's going to be an approval of deficit financing to help Rockland straighten things out, it comes with strings attached, with more significant oversight and scrutiny, probably not with the control board, but with the controller's office. So we would step up and play a role similar to what we've done in other deficit financing situations. Look, you look at the stress points across the state. Many municipalities are in trouble, partially because of the tough economy, it's affected revenues, partially because state and federal aid has diminished or been flat for a number of years, partially because in many cases, they made their own mistakes locally. So, and then you got the tax cap on top of it, which has, put a limitation in terms of how much money can be raised to the property tax. So that combination has created in Rockland. You mentioned Nassau, where I live. We've had a control board for a number of years. We still have problems. Many of our cities, when you go to the cities in central New York, western New York, southern tier, demographic changes and structural problems that they've been facing for decades. All of that is putting tremendous pressure. We don't want to see New York be like California, where you have municipalities filing for bankruptcy. That's never been our tradition.
Risk, though?
I don't think it's a risk today, but as you look forward, if this economy doesn't pick up, if revenues, be it sales tax, property tax base, don't pick up, if we don't see perhaps some help from Washington, we're facing the possible impact of sequestration. We could lose over the next few years as much as $5 billion in money coming to the state government, to local governments. That maybe could put some folks to the brink. It's partially why we're instituting through the Comptroller's Office a fiscal monitoring system to identify as soon as possible those localities that could really be headed to crisis.
When you hear talk, for example, about casinos, especially to some of the upstate communities that you mentioned here, including also the Catskill area, et cetera, you think it's fool's gold here, that it sounds good, but when you look at other places, the monies don't really materialize as promised? Or do you think that, hey, it's worth a shot?
Well, there's still a lot of analysis that has to go on, and obviously it's ultimately going to be decided by the voters. My own personal point of view, if I could put it that way, a little less the controller hat and more personal point of view, I do have a concern that we have too high an expectation that gambling revenue is going to solve our problems. And we are at a point now where, you could argue, all right, it's happening in other states. You have the, the casinos and the video lottery terminals. You have the Indian casinos. Why not have it more broadly applied? But do we reach a point of saturation? And are we just competing against ourselves?
Some argue we've already at that point now.
And that we don't know the answer to that, but I think that's an important question to ask.
Part of your job is to have oversight of the pension fund. The governor doesn't like that. He's been pretty vocal on this. And I've spoken to a lot of people who feel, not just you, but also the Attorney General, get squeezed more than most controllers and attorney generals do by this particular governor. Tom, it's an open secret. This isn't a warm and cuddly relationship, but does it get in the way of doing the job sometimes?
First of all, I think sometimes it's overstated about some of that tension, and I think you need to recognize that.
Sometimes understated.
Well, the Comptroller's Office was set up to be an independent voice and to be a check, frankly, on the executive and the legislature. And it's not a surprise that there's tension. That's always been the case. But that's part of the institutional dynamic that those that put the Constitution and set up these offices expected. You have to be independent. You have to call shots as you see it with a longer-term view, and that does sometimes put you in conflict. When it comes to the pension, I've been very clearly a defender of defined benefit pensions. Others have other points of view. And I'm very proud to say we just announced our results for the end of the year. We are now at an historic high. We're at $160.4 billion. Yep. We had an over 10% positive return this year. We're just about out of the woods of that significant market loss that everybody faced when Wall Street tanked. So some of the concern that's been out there about the rising contribution rates that have affected employers, state and local government, we do have one more year with upward pressure, but we're going to begin to see the decline very soon. I think that will change. I hope it will change some of the dynamic of the conversation about what the pension plan is all about, how well-funded it is in New York, that we benefit from having a well-funded plan, and I'm very proud to stand up for that. And you know what? I'm still standing, and we're still looking out for the pension fund.
Well, have a safe trip back to Long Island.
Thank
I
you,
appreciate
Richard.
you
Always
giving
good to
us
be
a
with
few
you.
minutes. You
Thank
too.
you.
All right, that's Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. All right, joining us next, we're going to bring our panel in here, talking off, obviously, about what happened in D.C. today, how the president, if he can move past what has been a very, very bad week. Stay with us, everybody. With that and a lot more straight on RFL.